And today we're going to share with you our work on the Locality QI Fellowship, which I have to say the bulk of the work has been done by Nadine, my colleague, who's going to present to you here today. So I'm going to hand over to Nadine now, who's going to take us through the presentation.
Thanks, Sati. I'm just going to share my screen, but just to note, I can't see any chat boxes or hand raises. So Sati, if you could flag anything that, excuse me, I'm just getting over a cough as well, so I have to forgive any.
Will do, Nadine.
Right, I tested this a minute ago, logging on early, so fingers crossed. Can everyone see that? Those slides?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So, as Sati mentioned, this is a bit about how we've developed our Locality Quality Improvement Fellowship Programme, which is a joint initiative with Workforce Programme Manager, who's Sati, and my team. So I'm the Senior Manager for Innovation and Research, and I have the Innovation Research and QI team who have that remit in Salford. So we've worked together on this this program as a pilot. Actually predated both of us working from what would have been the CCG at the time. So we've picked this up in 2018 and had some recent change to it and did a big trial of a new way of delivering a quality improvement fellowship program across the health and care system. So we're going to go through our sort of journey with that, how we're delivering it, why we do it the way we do it, and some of the results that we've seen as a result of doing this work so far. So I'll take you through the background. Why on earth would we do this in the first place? The particular aims of the Quality Improvement Fellowship Programme, how we've designed and delivered the programme, how we're evaluating it, and then I've got some data. We 21 to 22 cohort finished their work formally in September. They graduate in about 3 weeks' time on the 8th of December. So we've just had their evaluation feedbacks through that we're working through the data at the moment. So I can share you the very latest data we have on the cohort outcomes, so you can get a picture of what the impact has been on these people who've taken part in the fellowship over the last 12, 18 months. We've got James on the call, who's one of our graduating fellows from that cohort 21-22, and he'll just give you a bit about his experience, a little bit of insight and feedback from what he's got out of it and why he did the fellowship and where he might go next. And then, as Sophie mentioned, we've got time for Q&A. I've got quite a few slides. I've tried not to do death by PowerPoint. If there's anything that's really unclear or there's any immediate questions, I don't mind people jumping in. I won't be offended at interruptions. So do feel free to raise your hand. I can't see it, but my colleague Sati can, and can field and just jump in with any questions that you've got. I don't think I need to do my housekeeping slides because we've already had some, but same, everything that's there is exactly the same as what Sophie raised earlier. So the background, why are we even doing this in the first place? How did this come about, this notion of doing fellowships? Because it started as a workforce initiative. I mean, they're called Quality Improvement Fellowships. The topic of the fellowship came second, the notion of a fellowship came first. And that was sort of prior to, say, 2018, 2017, a bit earlier. And it came about as part of the workforce development programme, really envisioned to support a bit three-pronged. So some development of new skills in the workforce generally, as a general kind of training and development initiative, to really build up primary care and system leadership capability, so new ways of working and leading in the system. But in particular, there was a real interest in the time in ways to attract recruitment into the locality, and one of those means was thought to be trialling portfolio roles in primary care. So can we offer an alternative to a fully clinical week that may attract people into coming to work as a GP in Salford who might not have otherwise been considering working in our area. So the those were sort of pinpoint goals. The sort of strategic overarching goal was obviously that more attractive primary care employment offer. So increasing recruitment into the locality. It initially focused on attracting early career. Oh, I'm getting some feedback. I don't know if everyone's on mute. I've just suddenly got some feedback. If anyone's not muted. That's disappeared. Thank you. So we initially focused on attracting early career GPs to Salford. So this was originally excuse me, originally envisioned as a within 5-year post CCT qualified GPs. So just moving that my way. So working with the workforce and innovation and research team together, we came up with 2 topical ideas that would fit that ability to offer a portfolio role, and that was quality improvement and research. So between 2018 and 2020, we had 4 active quality improvement fellows running 2 concurrent fellowships. So we had 2 quality improvement fellows and 2 research fellows, and we were trialing 2 different ways of actually delivering it as well simultaneously. So the quality improvement program was a 1-year learning and development program. The research pathway was done as a 2-year program because that's the nature of linking it to an MRes, which is a master's in research, meant that 2 years would be appropriate to do that, to follow that standard academic time scale for that kind of work. And also the general longer term nature of research demands something a little bit longer. So both of the positions were advertised out, and they were 50-50. So they were 5.5 whole-time equivalent clinical within, we would place them in a Salford GP practice, and 0.5 would be this portfolio role, either their quality improvement work or their academic personal research and involvement in research within primary care. So on both cases, these were designed, and as I say, they were designed sort of prior to us, really. They were designed as almost outsourced fellowship programs. So there was a quality improvement and innovation science hub in Salford called Halo, who I actually worked with at the time and moved from there to the CCG. They hosted the fellows within that QI consultancy body. There was also a flagship training program within there called IS4AC, Improvement Science for Academics, that was mostly focused on clinical academic leaders. So those consultants who do a lot of research primarily, who publish, and who wanted to branch out into improvement science. So they were going to work with those fellow academic clinicians and conduct a QI project within their practices. The research fellows, on the other hand, we were working with the University of Manchester to provide some academic mentorship and take them through that MRes, and with the National Institute for Health Research Clinical Research Network, so the local GM clinical research network, who facilitate big academic and commercial research in primary care, to give them that experience of what does it mean to be a practicing GP facilitating and delivering this kind of work in your practice, which is of interest and real value in primary care, because a lot of these studies do come with income generation for a practice as well. So it's got that leadership element of it too. So we successfully recruited all positions. So we had 2 GP fellows in quality improvement and 2 GP fellows in research. The outcome of that program really was, from a retention point of view, was that the quality improvement GPs, unfortunately, neither of them remained in Salford, but both of them, we do stay in touch. Both of them do continue to work with QI and get involved in national programs. And the reason that they didn't remain in Salford wasn't anything to do with Salford. It was one of those quirks of early career medics, that they were both married to other early career medics, but who were going through the ST training routes, and thus ended up moving to secure the placement that they wanted to get. So they were reasons outside of our control. Promisingly, though, the two GPs that were recruited into the research positions, they are still working within sulfur practices and they are still involved in research in their practices. So it does seem to have had benefits. Sample size obviously not big enough to infer anything from these two people who've stayed, but that it's bedded in well and it introduced them well to the system. So we thought, right, okay, well, we'll scale up this test then. We'll do a bit of a review of it and we'll go out and we'll do fellows again. And then the COVID shaped spanner, we should call it, left us to pause and review that program. So quite conveniently, if anything about COVID could be called convenient, we'd finalised those fellowships just before it really hit. So it didn't interrupt what we had, it interrupted our plans to continue what we wanted to do with a follow-on programme. So Sati and I were both redeployed at that time for our sins to manage vaccine rollout. So there wasn't much resource to go into planning a new phase. We basically waited for COVID to come down a bit in terms of its impact on the system. And then when we could step back from the vaccine work, we started planning again by, in first instance, doing a bit more of an in-depth review about our learning from having delivered those two pilot schemes pre-COVID and what some of the post-COVID world and system changes we were expecting now with an integrated care system might mean for how we would do it again in the future. And then with the mindset of mind to designing how we would continue trialing this quite successful scheme. So our main reflections and learning from the quality improvement arm was that 0.5 was quite a lot of time to give someone to spend on quality improvement in situ. So what we felt that we got out of it, looking at the outputs and the end reports, we thought that could probably have been done in less than half the time. We an element of that might have been we used the external consultancy, so we used Halo to provide 100% of that program. So we paid them to deliver the fellowship of the quality improvement. There was always be a risk with using an external consultancy, and unfortunately that risk was realised. So Halo ceased operations in late 2018, early 2019, so right bang in the middle of that fellowship. And was subsumed into an organisation called Aqua, so the Advancing Quality Alliance, also an employment quality improvement specialist, but not technically based in Salford. They were based in Sale. It added a few complications, and also that they were picking up all of the other work from Halo as well, so there were some capacity issues too. We realised for both branches actually that placing a new staff member, especially for quality improvement, someone who was new to Salford and almost parachuting them into a Salford practice, they didn't have much contextual knowledge of some of the problems there that they could then use their quality improvement skills to address. So it delayed some of that progress and outputs while they bedded into the practice, got used to who the patient pop were, what some of the local challenges and issues were, how the practice worked, where quality could make improvements. That was less of a challenge for the research fellows because they weren't necessarily researching something that addressed the practice specifically, but that was definitely key learning for us that maybe as a recruitment means we'd have to elongate it or look at a different way of getting them that knowledge of maybe giving them a project, for example. But ultimately, QI really did engage and significantly interest them. I mentioned earlier that we've followed up with both and they do still get involved, not just conduct quality improvement, but they get involved in regional and even national quality improvement networks and other things. So it is of interest and it is a valued area for learning and skills. We had an idea when setting out with the fellowships that we could generate this kind of network of improvers and leaders in the system, but ultimately both the two GPs that we had weren't able to stay on. That network wasn't going to be realised, but was maybe too few to actually kickstart off a network. Probably with hindsight, it was, even with the research fellows as well. We found with them that 0.5 whole-time equivalent could be much more fully and appropriately utilised because you had the academic module completion that come with coursework, lectures, etc. And in taking part with the CRN to develop some things on site when it comes to research in their practice, that participation as a principal or secondary investigator or a site lead would also be well within that sort of time scale. We did have, as a trial scheme, it was quite an informal test partnership with the academic partners, but that, as with anything that's not really formalised, there were challenges maintaining that momentum and interest when the mentoring that's ongoing is quite ad hoc. So we thought that we were to do that again, we would put more robust contractual arrangements in with the academic institutions now that we'd tested it to secure the level of commitment we think will be required. But generally, that research one as well found significant value, really, through leveraging that CRM relationship, using fellows to champion research. It got practices and patients involved in research that may not been able to. We were actually just about to go out again with some HEE monies to take on 2 more research fellows when they announced that the integrated care system changes. Now that posed a big uncertainty for us about the statutory role, because the CCG, as we were, had a statutory role for that promotion and facilitation of research in primary care, and we don't know where that sits. So we've pulled back on that, and that's currently on ice. So what I'm talking to you about in terms of our delivery is the second round of the Quality Improvement Fellowship Scheme. But just to note, we are still quite interested and think it is of value to have that research option as well. So the main outcomes of that review that were suggestions for us to factor really strongly into the design for how we would roll out a quality improvement fellowship anew. It is firstly to, as I say, pause that research one and just focus on the QI fellows. We've got the statutory responsibility change, but also the uncertainty risk. A system transition period and a 2-year scheme don't necessarily go hand in hand for being able to be done as consistently as you'd like, and we're still a bit burned from the risk of what happened with the QI fellows and that system change and how it impacted that piece. We decided that, from a big sort of workforce strategy line, to refocus from recruitment to retention. So that pilot scheme was about bringing staff into Salford, but along with some of the challenges of that and bedding them in, the system priorities evolved now, with retention being a bit more of a major challenge. So if we shifted the focus on providing this as an opportunity to existing staff, we could better support retention and capacity. But crucially, it's enabling people that are already in the system to use that local experience and knowledge that they've gained to make the improvements in their services that they're delivering. Relating to the network of improvers aim, we thought we'll increase the cohort size by changing a few things and reviewing budgets. We came up with 6 as a good number. I would obviously love to take on as many as we can, but with a balance of affordability and pump priming a network, we thought we'd trial 6 initially, mitigate some of that risk of natural turnover, decrease the allocated time to a day a week, so 0.2 instead of 0.5. And we really felt that based on what we'd found from the previous cohort, that we could save quite significantly on that time. So it's far more efficient program than the one that we trialed first. We wanted to go beyond just GPs, because we wanted, if we're going to have a system network of improvers, we wanted to reflect a system level of network of workforce roles. So as well as other senior sort of clinical staff, so it's still open to GPs, but also maybe AHPs, first contact practitioners, pharmacists, other non-clinical managers as well. We wanted to get a kind of across the system view to most effectively get a locality focused on improvement. And then we blended the delivery style. So as I mentioned before, we kind of outsourced to Halo Aqua improvement agencies in the first cohort. But since that, we'd had changes in the team. So I mentioned I came from Halo, used to deliver some of that training there. I was in post. We had a new role in the team later in quality improvement as well. So we had the expertise now available to be able to do some of it in-house. We still wanted to utilise local expertise where possible, because Aqua still have those great training programmes. and bring in any external expertise where it was necessary. So that gives us a bit of mitigation for the risk of outsourcing. But really, I know it sounds a bit cheesy, but it's not just about teaching them QI, but how to deliver QI in Salford. Nothing happens in a vacuum in quality improvement. So we really need that locality involvement and level of knowledge to get the best out of it for them. So the present programme then, this is the one that we've been running from the 21 to 22 cohort, so that's September 21 to September 22, and for the cohort that we've just launched now. I thought it would be useful, firstly, for those who don't know, to actually say what on earth do I mean by quality improvement. So the definition that we use is that it's about making a difference to patients and staff by improving the safety, effectiveness, and experience of care, primarily through using understanding of systems, so it's a complex healthcare environment and the impact of context, applying a systematic approach with a robust methodology, use of data, and then designing, testing, and implementing changes using real-time measurement for improvement. And the definition I find encapsulates it best is probably from the Health Foundation, who say that quality improvement's about giving people closest to the issues affecting care quality the time, permission, skills, and resources that they need to solve them. Oh, I don't. Back there. It involves a systematic and coordinated approach to solving a problem using specific methods and tools with the aim of bringing about a measurable improvement. And the core kind of principle for that is the model for improvement is about being able to articulate what are we trying to accomplish, being able to measure so we'll know how we will know a change is an improvement, to be able to organise our ideas around improvements in terms of changes and tests, what change can we make that will result in it, and then have a methodologically robust, systematic way of testing those ideas in practice and developing learning about how things could be improved. So obviously the first aim of our quality improvement fellowships is to realise that definition in practice in our locality. Giving the people closest to issues affecting care quality the things that they don't usually have: time, permission, skills and resources to solve them. So by the end of the 1 year programme, we set our aims out that fellows would have received and spent this 1 day a week of protected funded time. So they're going to get the time to do it. They're going to get the core training modules and some optional ones, which I'll go into, and they'll have attended those. Seen a measured improvement in their skills and knowledge of QI and some supporting methods. They'll have delivered at least one QI project of their own design within their role, and that they'll develop this readiness and confidence to kind of identify, initiate, and lead change in Salford and to champion quality improvement. So it goes on with these specific tools and methods about bringing a measurable improvement. There's much wider systemic and workforce benefits. Those are the immediate term goals that we have, but we acknowledge that there are threefold longer term benefits, and that's to the individual, to the organisation, and ultimately to the patients, service users, public. So an individual should develop skills, confidence, knowledge, support networks. This is sort of professional, personal development. If that happens, the organisation will gain from improved processes and outcomes, that organisational capacity and capability for QI, and hopefully that higher chance of retention that we spoke to. And then ultimately, as I said, the people at the end here, through an improvement-led system, the ultimate gain will be for them. Improved systems, processes, health and care outcomes, staffing levels, etc. That's the end goal of anything that we do. So we've designed it quite specifically in mind. I'm just checking on time because I'm conscious I'm only hearing my own voice, so I don't want to drone. So I'll go through these systematically, shall we say, and try and give plenty of time for questions at the end. But in a nutshell, that the kind of theoretical underpinning, when you've got something that's already described as needing to give people time, permission, skills, and resources, straight away spoke to me of the COM-B model of behaviour change. capability, opportunity, motivation equals behavior, B. And what that does is it describes how you can ultimately result in positive change by focusing on capability, motivation, and opportunity. And these can be broken down further into physical capability and psychological, reflective motivation and automatic, and physical and social opportunities. So we matched that really to the design we had to make sure we ticked all the boxes, to make sure that we were really giving people a method of time, permission, skills, and resources. So our desired behaviour is increased QI activity from these individuals. That's what we would think of as success if they were developed in this area. So in terms of the capability, opportunity, motivation, that the physical capability is that QI knowledge and skills, and the supplementary knowledge and skills. So what do you know about quality improvement methodology? And what do you know about some of the other things, project management, soft skills, other things around that will help you deliver those methods? And the psychological capability, the feeling of confidence, give them that experience, that experiential learning of implementing that knowledge in practice within a supported environment. For the opportunity, well, there's the physical opportunity, the literal resources, time and money. So the protected time, that headspace to get into it, to learn, to get the ideas, the knowledge and skills resources, as well as the financial. And the social opportunity is that ability to network with other improvers, building a sense of a QI culture and it becoming normalized. And then lastly, motivation. We deliberately go for those individuals who are self-motivated and interested anyway, give ourselves a head start there. But you develop your reflective motivation, that ability to constantly review and want to do things differently. We build that with the regular knowledge and skills assessments and ensuring that confidence in their abilities and knowledge that they have. And the automatic motivation, this is how we do things as usual. We celebrate success. We will, reward the work that they're doing. They're supportive mentoring as well. So in practice, what that looks like as a delivery model, we've got the backfill funding, 0.2 whole-time equivalent, 1 day per week. And that really is the critical opportunity of this programme. That's fellows themselves have called it headspace, time and headspace, just for them to participate, to learn, to do. The knowledge and skills analysis and ongoing monitoring of their development is capability and motivation in one. So it's critical really to understand and evidence progression of the main learning elements of the programme. So what we first do is we do a baseline QI skills needs analysis, and then we look at key areas for their development throughout the fellowship. We'll assign a mentor from our faculty, which I've got info on further on. And that's about matching their expertise to the fellows' needs as well. So we work with them to see what they personally and individually want to develop throughout the fellowship. So from the core faculty, they'll have a mentor. So these are local, we have to put local leaders in their field with expertise in quality improvement methods and the system experience. So there's myself, I do some mentoring. There's Sati does some mentoring. My colleague, who's the head of innovation and research, does mentoring. And if and when we needed other external ones, we would be open to looking at that. But at the moment, we've been able to cover our mentoring needs with internal expertise, thankfully. So that's monthly check-ins with the mentor. Well, we say at least once per month. We can be quite flexible. We might do more frequent bi-weekly sessions at first, maybe less frequently at the end, but we target it on having done at least sort of 11 to cover a mostly monthly model throughout the course of the programme. The bulk of what we provide is that training. It's the opportunity to build capability. And it's designed intentionally to be front loaded with training. So it's a 12-month program, but most of them allocated time in the first quarter, in the first 4 months, so the first third even, would be spent on learning that key QI theory and skills. So we front load them with the knowledge. Then the rest of the time that they've got is really geared towards implementation and actually trying to put that knowledge in practice, embedding it, socializing it, and making sure it sticks. So we provide a core training curriculum of 4 courses: an introduction to improvement, improvement practitioner, a masterclass in measurement and a 2-day course on human factors and their impact on quality. And we procure those 4 courses from Aqua still. As I mentioned earlier, we've seen good success. Their courses are good, and we still use them for that. We also put on supplementary training sessions, masterclasses, resources. So we use the results of the QI skills gap analyses. We use other system resources that we can get. So we've got, for example, an external agency who called Mackenzie, who do an equality impact assessment course. So we give them that. So how to EIA your QI projects. We use internal expertise. So my role when I was working directly in quality improvement was specifically around innovation science and evaluation. So I do an evaluation masterclass. We've got partner providers, so we're looking at sort of connections with Northern Care Alliance, QI department and their training offer, and local L&D partners. So we've got our business intelligence team do something on dashboards, and we've got an L&D at the council who are doing something for us on Microsoft Excel. So we bring in quite a wide utilisation of the learning development resources in the system wherever possible. We're not heavily reliant on one agency where we can avoid. And then in terms of the last real opportunity that we provide is bursary funding. So we make a £2,000 budget available to each fellow for them to tailor their fellowship development programme with any specific needs or interests. So, for example, some fellows have used it for project management qualifications, for going on leadership classes, for public health modules, there's various things that they've used it for that enhance either the topic that they're doing their project on or something specific to their specialty or career that they can use alongside the QI skills to go even further. So that's what we deliver, and that's how it links to the kind of theory of it. We structure it internally in terms of how the nuts and bolts of how you deliver it. Well, we have a small steering group that meets quarterly. So there's a head of innovation and research. There's myself, senior manager for innovation and research. Sati, who's the workforce program manager. It's a vacant post at the moment, but we have a QI program manager post in the team. So that would mean all the mentors were covered in that as well. And there's typically a primary care exec. So what we have been having is the chief operating officer of the local GP federation who manage some of the practices that the GPs may or may not work in. So we've got that primary care voice in the room. So that really covers everything in terms of accountability for the budget, making sure we're delivering, assigning mentors, any sort of escalation of issues. But the day-to-day management, the answering the mailbox queries, doing your documents, templates, putting your requests in for funding, that's done by my team and members of my couple of project managers on my team as well. And reporting wise, it goes into the primary care workforce development group. But with some of the locality changes and ICS stuff going on, we are reviewing that we think there might be a wider system focus. And there's been, like with us doing this session today, there's been some interest wider in GM. So we're more than happy to report to other groups that may find the learning from our scheme beneficial. So I mentioned earlier that we were opening it up to wider eligibility criteria than our initial trial. So to be eligible to take on this 12-month training development scheme, they have to be currently employed by a Salford-based provider or statutory organisation, and that's pretty much anywhere but acute. And that's largely because QI on a ward environment is quite different to QI in a community setting. We're really focused on the latter because we know that there's quite a bit more provision through QI teams within trusts that are already focused on a ward level. So we're trying to address a gap. So we look at primary care, any setting, social, domiciliary care, community, public health. They obviously have to be either permanently employed or on a fixed term that can't end before it's in. We don't set a seniority level. We don't say you have to be a minimum of band 6 or whatever, but we say that they have to have a level of either seniority or autonomy that lets them put changes in place without having to jump through too many hoops. Because if you're not able to enact change, you're going to struggle to deliver quality improvement. So these are some of the roles that we sort of give us indicative that might be able to do that. And ultimately, they have to have the full support and permission of their employer and line manager. We can't just pay someone 1 day a week. That's got to go through quite a few elements of approval in the organisation to take up the offer. And then we do an application interview process that's, because we're not recruiting people, we can focus it almost entirely on that they're the right people. We know that they've got the clinical skill set, for example. We know that they're appropriately qualified. All of that's been done already. The fact that they're working in the system, we're looking for that proactivity, that self-drive, that genuine interest in QI, the passion about their services. We really focus on getting motivated people in. As I mentioned earlier, we front load it deliberately with training. So this is the actual schedule for the 22-23 cohort, where the bulk of their training will actually be done by sort of February. So they'll be using that training to design and plan a project, and then they'll be largely delivering the fellowship with a few training sessions interspersed in between, but predominantly putting that learning into practice and getting regular feedback through mentoring. And then the graduation tends to be within a couple of months after the finish of the fellowship activities. So we don't employ them. So we do acknowledge that, what's the contractual basis and the accountability and risk and things for this? Well, we've got a learner agreement for that. So it's a backfill resource provision. So we don't, that should say we don't, not we do give them a contract of employment. I'll change that before I send them out. Their employer remains completely responsible for all elements of HR. So line management, salary, annual leave, professional capabilities, indemnity, etc. What we ask them to sign is a 3-way learner agreement. So we sign it, they sign it, and their line manager signs it on behalf of the organisation. It says, these are the resources and deliverables we're providing you with. This is the value and schedule of the backfill payments that we've agreed to be paid to you and when. Here's the things the individual fellow is committing to and the expectations for their participation, and that the employer commits to release them for the backfill resource and for the training dates that we send out that year in advance. So all those 4 core courses go out before the applications are even in. So that's advance notice. Importantly, that also gives us our clauses and terms for any reimbursement of costs in the cases of breaches of agreed commitments. So if that organisation prevents them from attending, or if that fellow ceases to engage, we've got a remit there for a kind of safety net of pulling back. The main bulk of what we do in terms of looking at the outcomes of the project is assessing and monitoring the knowledge and skills. So I would say if we can't measure evidence in individuals' development over time, then how on earth would we have a functional development programme? So we've got a bespoke QI knowledge and skills framework. It's something I've worked on for a number of years, including beyond this job. And it's through a mix of experience, some QI literature reviews, testing it through various cohorts of different training and development programs in QI, but it covers 4 main areas. So fundamentals are the areas of core improvement science theory that underpin the methodology, things like systems thinking, PDSAs, model for improvement. Implementation are these knowledge and skills areas around practical delivery of QI. Tools and methodologies are there's so many different methodologies for QI, but we'll go into some of the more commonly used specific tools and frameworks that are used, spine models, all sorts of things, and I've got a list of them in the sheets after. And supplementary knowledge and skills are areas that aren't explicitly QI but are proven complementary, project management skills, Microsoft Excel skills, etc. So we've developed a scale that goes from novice to expert. So it's difficult to get a consistent ranking of personal development if it's entirely self-reported without giving them some clear descriptors of what we mean by each level. So there's a scale that we've developed, a scale that says from novice is I've never heard of this before, and expert is I know this so well I could teach it myself. And we aim to increase everyone to at least level 3 of intermediate, where they've had some experience, so they have tried doing it themselves, but it's not something that they've done with great regularity, which is so as you'd expect for 12 months. So some of these fundamentals will get them just to score themselves on there. We then put it into a dashboard. So I like to use radar charts. I think it gives a really useful at a glance data visualization, because you've got these milestone bands. And visualization of data really is critical for quality improvement motivation across the board. So they're tracking literal expansion of their knowledge and skill set across those different 4 sections of the knowledge and skills analysis. It helps with motivation. It helps with engagement. It helps spotting trends in progress, like, wow, you've really jumped up in PDSAs this month, for example. As well as, this is an area that's not had any progress recently, or do we think we've reached the epitome of what we could do here? So we do this on an individual user basis, and we encourage them strongly to utilize this as part of their personal development plans with their line managers. So it's multi-purpose, and track their own development over time. In terms of knowing whether we've been successful, I'll just dash through this last 5 minutes of data, and I can open for questions. And apologies, there's a lot more slides than I probably set out to do. We use a logic model. We very much with this program, we put our money where our mouth is. We use quality improvement methods to run it, to evaluate it, and to develop it. So one of those ways is an evaluation means of using a logic model to make really explicit what the chains of cause and effect we're expecting to get from what we're putting in to what we're expecting to get out. So these are our inputs. These are the activities that I mentioned earlier alongside along those lines of the COM-B that we think will work. This is how we think they will work. These will get these short-term outcomes. They will lead to medium-term outcomes that will lead to long-term. And that gives us, you'll see my little codes at the end of each of these outcomes for impacts. Things that we can actually then test to validate those expectations, or to invalidate them and lead us to go back and amend our plans if the results aren't what we saw. So we've got some process measures, KPIs, if you will. Are we delivering what we said we'd deliver? Their attendance, for example, that they're receiving the time, that they're utilising the budgets. The outcome measures, are they increasing the QI skills? Are they increasing QI activity? And ultimately, to graduate, that they've delivered a write-up of at least one small project. The longer term outcomes, and these ones can't be measured in 12 months, these are to pitch us forward, are that they firstly have been retained within the workforce. I've put Salford or NHSGM because of the changes that we've got coming, but generally we want them in the region, ideally the locality. Hopefully they'll have utilised their experience to develop further new career development opportunities, roles, expansions, and ultimately that they continue to apply the QI learning. So we have seen positive noises in those data. So the final cohort of 21-22 did go beyond GPs, even though half of them were GPs. We had an AHP, a project manager within pharmacy, and a governance and quality lead, which was sort of a project manager role in primary care. These are just a reminder of our process measures. This is what we actually achieved. So the monthly mentoring attendances across, on average, 91.6 was exactly what we targeted. It was kind of knocked out by 1 or 2 fellows that weren't fully compliant, but we know the reasons behind that. And one of them has had a delay that means they'll be finishing it slightly later. We've got a survey, and the fellows have reported there's only 2 fellows reporting slightly less than 1 day a week on average, but in both instances this is related to sickness absence. We had no concerns about employers not honouring protected time, which was fantastic. We only had 1 unexpected absence, which this is one of the same fellows, that's been addressed with the catch-up plan. But otherwise attendance was great. It wasn't mandated for provided the non-core sessions, but it was only 1 absence, and everyone attended the bursary funded sessions. It was a bit harder than we thought to utilise the training budget, the bursary budget. We got an average spend. We wanted to utilise it above 90%, but we ended up with 77.96% utilisation. Some of the reflections on that, COVID's an ongoing disruption. Things were still being done virtually. We did have a bunch of people booked onto things that then got cancelled due to the unfortunately timed death of Her Majesty, and also system pressures and that ability to plan for. These are the actual data for the proficiency level increases that we saw. So we've got the QI fundamentals, and I've put these two on here because the patterns that we saw are exactly what we hope to see, which is always a good thing. Bigger jumps in the methodological knowledge at first, which then tightened up as you moved into implementation. But implementation knowledge was growing in those blue and purple bands, those June to September. So they'd got all of that head learning, they were putting that head learning into practice. The additional QI skills as well, we had some jumps. We have reviewed some of these fields that we didn't have jumps in because we thought, well, if we're not jumping in them, what are we doing with them? And the supplementary knowledge and skills, actually, they were quite high. Level 3 is a good number that we wanted to be at with most areas so that we had some experience. It's nice to see them in charts for the visualization, but obviously the raw data is behind those, and you can see here the actual movement in those from the baseline. So at 6 months, there were some really good results. At 12 months, you're looking at in some areas of 200% plus increases in their knowledge from that baseline score that they gave, which was an average of novice for everything there. And we passed that target we set ourselves of bringing everyone up to intermediate. We passed that there. We targeted implementation on 50% above intermediate, and we beat that there. We looked at with QI tools and methodologies. We were exploring the value of these. We didn't deliberately target them, but again, there's nothing with any particularly low areas. Academic publications wasn't much of interest, so we've actually removed that. And these are some of the posters, presentations for the graduation event that we've got coming on in December. So we looked at that knowledge and skills. We do that through that. We look at outcome measures, increasing QI activity, delivering a write-up of it. This is how we will judge them on that. So they will be presenting these at the, so you can see they've got some great utilization of data. Some of them have reflected on their own learning dashboards. They've all got really good learning and development from the work that they've been done in their various projects. Just a reminder of the wider benefits that we looked at. And I'll send most of these out rather than read them because I'm just conscious of time. But we do a survey, and I've just started pulling in the 12-month survey data. It's only recently completed, but we asked them about the value that they felt, if anything, had come from for themselves, and a lot of them talking about opportunity. I've helped to develop, my knowledge has improved, I've got these skills, knowledge and skills. We asked about their organisation, and they all mentioned about, I've been able to support other work, I've been able to improve practice, I can think of things differently, I can give a different viewpoint, I can deliver better for my employer. And the patients and service users, they're talking about the results of their project. So this one was around improving HIV testing. They're getting better, they're getting benefits from the better structure and the better ways of working. And in this case, it's an incident management project. So getting through that backlog of complaints and actually getting direct resolution for service users. And looking forward to some of the more long-term benefits. We wanted to sort of start scoping. There's so much data I could have put in here, but I've gone on long enough. That how frequently do they expect to be carrying out quality improvement activities in their day-to-day role? So of those that only said sometimes, the two of them, they were GPs, so it's understandable really that with the pressures on them that it might not be as often as they'd like. But 4 out of the 6 fellows said that frequently they would expect improvement work would become a common element of their day-to-day role, which is fantastic. It's widening the scope of those roles as well as improving that for the individual. I won't go through some of the amendments that we made. What I'll do, if that's okay, for 2 minutes, a very quick word from James, as James was one of our cohort fellows who graduates in December, but has actually come to work for my team since doing his fellowship. So I'll just quickly hand over to James. I'll stop sharing and I'll hand over to you, James, just to give a bit of, why did you do it? Why did you do the fellowship? What do
Yeah,
you think you got out of it?
sure. So I've worked in primary care for probably about 5 or 6 years now. And I think anyone who works in primary care knows there's a lot of room for improvement, but I think it's often quite daunting knowing what to do, kind of what areas to look at and how to go about doing that. And as well as that, doing your day job on top of everything as well. So I applied for it with that in mind, like wanting to make improvements, but not quite sure about how to go about it in a meaningful way. So what I found really useful was it massively improved my confidence in how to deliver quality improvement work. So I had Nadine as my tutor, for example. So she helped me kind of define the scope and the aims of my project, which was instant reporting, kind of how to go about that in a way that wasn't going to be overwhelming for me, so I could continue to work in my other areas of work. But also when things were going wrong, kind of to have that support and kind of guidance and methodologies to kind of put me back on track, but also the reassurance that when things weren't going the way they should have done, that was okay as well. Because I think without that, I'd have probably struggled or given up or moved on to something else. So having that guidance for 12 months over the project has been invaluable to me. So it's definitely increased my confidence. And as Nadine said, now I work in her team. So going forward, I can take these skills into the work I do. So looking at care navigation in the workforce department. So I'm taking that into practice now and using the skills I've gained going forward. So overall, it's been a really, really positive experience. I also got to do a project management qualification with the bursary I got, which has been obviously for me great. And I think as well, working in primary care as a non-clinical member of staff, I haven't found many opportunities to develop professionally, and kind of improve my skills. So this has been a great opportunity for that as well. So yeah, very, very grateful.
Thank you. And it's slightly biased because technically I do employ him, but I technically haven't paid him to say that.
No, I mean it. I mean it.
But so yeah, I mean, I can put my slide. My next slide is literally, does anyone have any questions for us? I just want to make sure I left 10 minutes or so at the end. If anyone's got any questions about the scheme, as I said, there's so much more that we could say. I've just tried to give a bit of a whistle-stop tour into what we're doing in Salford and why, and a taste of some of the results that we're starting to see through. No questions? Is that one in the chat?
Yeah, there's one in the chat there, yeah.
As physician associates can involve in the future. So physician associate would be a role that would be eligible for our fellowship if you were a PA in Salford. I don't think we have many physician associates in Salford actually, but it certainly would be a role that would be eligible for us. We wanted a wider scope of roles. We really wanted to get into the social care side of it with our current cohort as well. Unfortunately, that some of the pressures in some of the areas of the system, we didn't get any applications from there. They just didn't feel they even had the space to apply, let alone take up the opportunity of an offer. What I haven't said is that the cohort that we've taken on for 22-23 who've recently started actually involve there were 5, but there's one person who's gone to work for NHSGM, so it's skewed it a bit. So of the 5, there was a non-clinical primary care sort of project manager role who worked on extended access. But we've got 2 AHPs, we've got a physio and a podiatrist, and we've got 2 members of public health who are doing that as well. So we really are trying to get as good a spread across any and all roles to represent different, as James said, there's not a lot of non-clinical workforce opportunities out there. So that's a big one for us because they are often people who can put in place changes that still can have exceptional improvements. But also in the range of clinical and social care roles as well. We're very open to roles like physician associates, AMPs, or any and all roles basically. Everyone can do quality improvement. So it's a viable development route for pretty much any profession.
Nadine, are you happy for me to share the slides with everybody who signed up? Because
Yes.
normally I send around the YouTube link of the recording and then the slides for anyone who may have missed it.
Yeah, not a problem.
Yeah.
I can send those over to you now. I'll tweak that typo that said we do give them a contract when we don't. And then I'll fix that and I'll send it over to you.
Great, thanks. Any more questions or no?
No. Well, thank you for everyone who was interested in our program.
Well done. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, Nadine.
Bye now.
Thanks. Bye, James.
Thank you very much.